I'm sure you've heard of Matthew Mercer. He might be one of the most influential tabletop RPG game masters within the world. And people love his campaigns. It's because of the NPCs he creates, because of the villains he made, and because of the vast world he created. But the most important thing is the way he writes his campaigns, and that is what I want to look at today. A campaign consists of several story arcs that are connected to each other in some way. And each of those story arcs is made up of several stories that are also connected to each other in some way. And each of those stories is made up of one objective. When now the players overcome this objective, they learn something for the new story or about the story arc. So one of the first things that you want to look at is world building. You can either use the world that has been created and published by someone else, like the Forgotten Realms for Dungeons & Dragons, or you can make up your own world. When you make up your own world, you have to think about that the world becomes more detailed and bigger and better the more time you spend with the game. This is just a reminder that not everything has to be figured out at the start of the campaign, but you should spend some time to think about the place where the players are going to play through the campaign. For instance, the local places where those players come from, the places where the villain resides, and the places that they are going to encounter, so that when your players explore those places, that you can tell them what they find there. Another thing you want to spend time in is thinking about the lore of your world. Are there certain things that your players can play? Are there certain things that are not allowed within your world? What is the society like that your players are coming from, so they can create a backstory and so on. Then you want to have a session 0 with your players. A session 0 is in general a meetup of all the participants of the game. In short, a session 0 is there to bring everyone on the same page. Everyone should go home after a session 0, know exactly what they can and can't do and how the world is like. Another thing you may want to consider doing is a one-shot. A one-shot helps when players have never played a role-playing game before or have never played this specific role-playing game. For a one-shot you create several characters that your players can choose from. Then you make a short story that has 3 to 5 encounters that your player is gonna play through within one session. After this session your players should know how the game works in general and how certain characters work, so they can create a good character they have fun to play with for several weeks, months or years. One of the most important things for creating a good campaign is making the player characters. You as the game master are very likely to be the person that has most knowledge about how to make characters, how to write backstories and so on. So you as a game master should help your players figure out what they want to play within the game. You should give them tips about the game itself, and you should give them thoughts about what the world is like, what the society is like, so they can create a character that works fine within your world. You have to see it like this. Your players are going to view the world through the eyes of their character, and when the character or the backstory are boring, they're gonna receive the world as such, and therefore the game is lacking for them. One of the other 3 most important things to make a good campaign is make a villain. A villain should always be 3-dimensional, and when I say this, I don't mean you should have a villain with a tragic backstory so the players can empathize with them. You should have a villain that you can understand as the game master, because when you as a game master understand how the villain is, what he wants and so on, you understand what the villain would do in all the situations that your players are going to present you. It's very important that the villain is 3-dimensional because he is the driving force behind the story. He does all the things that the players are going to figure out. The single most important thing for a good campaign is a good plot. We start with the villain at the end of the campaign or at the start of the plot web. The villain is somehow connected to all or most of the story arcs. You may have a direct connection to the villain, for instance when you have a minion that works for the villain, or you can have an indirect connection by finding an item that is needed to destroy the villain or gain information about the villain or the things that villain does. Each of those story arcs is made up of several stories, and each of those stories is made up of one objective. When the players overcome this objective, they gain information and learn something about the story arc. At the other end of the plot web we have the backstories of the players, so we search for the most important thing out of this backstory and tie them into the plot web. Maybe the tragedy of one of the player characters is caused by a minion or the villain directly. When you do everything right at the end of a story arc, they gain information not only about the villain but also about themselves, about the things that happened in in their backstory, and that is going to make your players love your campaign. Now at last, let us talk about the session 1. A session 1 is similar to other sessions, but as the players are going to meet in this session, you have to put some more thought into it. You usually have 3 to 5 encounters, and it's easiest to start with the fighting encounters, so you have something that all players can pursue from the start of the game. More details in the next videos. That is all that I've got for today. Thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you've learned something. If you've liked what you've seen, please subscribe, and we see us in the next one.